Hello everybody, this is Yoko's Anime Reactions. Let's continue with this. This is part 8. Okay, chapter 10, Some Kind of Communication. Agnes was spending the entire day out in the garden, tending her medicinal herbs. She'd pulled her hair back in a ponytail and wore a wide-brimmed sun hat. To keep her dress from getting dirty, she also put on an apron and rolled back her sleeves. Normal attire for a commoner working the fields, but unthinkable for a count's daughter. Still, it posed no problem in her private gardens. It wasn't like she was off to a royal event dressed like this. So then, what was that young man with Prussian blue hair and dark gray eyes doing here? Hello, Agnes. Claude grinned down at her as she stiffened, dirty trowel in hand. Agnes had been working in her little medicinal herb garden located in the far back corner of the Lefort property. Claude may have been a prince, but even he couldn't just barge into private residence unannounced. So clearly someone must have shown him in, Agnes thought. The servants all knew that Agnes was working in the garden. Why didn't they show him into the dressing room to wait? Or the drawing room to wait? Hello, stammering Agnes looked down at her shabby, disheveled self. Should she run and change? No, if Claude found her disgusting, then good. He'd dissolve their arrangement, and then she'd be free. She'd miss the mushroom money, but it'd be worth it to have such a huge weight off her shoulders. I was told you were out gardening. You really are, aren't you? Are all these herbs that you've planted yourself? Can I come closer? No, you'll get all dirty. Agnes dropped the trowel and hurried over to Claude instead. Is there something I can help you with? Oh, no, I just wanted to see you, Agnes. Do you always show these off? What is he talking about? Agnes followed Claude's gaze down to her feet. Her white legs were bare since she'd hiked her dress skirts up about her knees. Oh. I'm sorry, this is terribly unladylike of me. She must have looked like a grubby farm worker to Claude's royal eyes. Still, he didn't seem to mind. The contract's still on, then. Sighing, Agnes untucked her skirt to cover her pale legs and patted the dust off her clothes. Perhaps she should take off her hat, too, she thought suddenly. It was rude not to, but she just knew her hair was a terrible mess underneath. Well, that was a treat. But never mind. Are you only growing medicinal herbs? Why do it yourself? To sell them. What? This many? Claude was baffled, and Agnes understood why. Medicinal herbs were the kind of thing you bought in adequate supply when needed, not something you grew yourself, especially if you were nobility. At any rate, the number of medicinal herbs a person could grow in their back garden wouldn't fetch very much money at all. What do you want to sell them for? To make money, of course, to fund my new life. Your new life? Commoner life. She's told you this before. Agnes's answer made the mushroom prince's shoulder slump. You're still going on about that, then? Yes. She has not told you that she's not doing it anymore, so assume that she still is. Agnes didn't like his dismissive tone, but regardless, she needed capital before embarking on her new life. That was a fact. Can you get all the money you need just selling them? Not at all, no. I'll have to engineer them so that... Engineer? Claude looked interested, but Agnes bit her tongue. Listen, it's kind of confidential, so would you... Agnes... Claude took hold of her hand, cutting her off as if she was about to ask him to leave. A black funnel-shaped mushroom popped up on the back of his black gloved hand. Oh, he's wearing black gloves today. Left hand. She thought it must have been Craterellus cornucopioides, but it was the same black as Claude's glove and looked more like some strange sewn-on embellishment. Agnes noticed what he was wearing, the same kind of simple shirt and trousers as yesterday, only with gloves on. It looked weird. Or maybe it was some sort of royal or knight policy to wear gloves at the time? We're close, though, aren't we? Can't you tell me? Our little arrangement has nothing to do with my current business venture. Anyway, it's not that interesting anyway. Agnes shook her head, and Claude responded by taking hold of her other hand. As if on cue, white mushrooms began popping up. She thought they were more Cufolus virginis at first, but on closer inspection, the caps had radiating lines running down them. It was actually Coprinellus disseminatus, and there were a lot of them. Little white mushrooms grow in thick clusters, leaving Claude's right arm looking like a big white mound and completely obscuring the black of his glove beneath. I cannot talk. I want to know everything there is to know about you. I won't let you go unless you tell me, you know. Claude fixed her with his gray eyes and smiled. It was a nice smile, Agnes thought, but this was still coercion. 3 small brown mushrooms sprang up on his arm with audible popping noises. Agnes sensed Claude turn his head ever so slightly, his eyes focusing for a moment on these new points of interest. Agnes knew that they were Russella compacta, a very fragile kind of mushroom with easily crumbling flesh. Claude's eyes kept flicking back and forth between the mushrooms and her face. Agnes suddenly started to wonder if Claude was acting this way to get as many mushrooms out of her as possible. Milking her for mushrooms makes far more sense than him actually being interested in her. Yeah, don't you think that maybe he might be paying this attention to you because he likes you? The mushrooms are just a bonus? And as odd of a consolation as it was, that very mistaken thought relieved Agnes as she nodded. Claude clearly took this as her giving him permission to harvest the mushrooms because he instantly let go of her and started gently plucking them off and putting them in his pocket. He treated the Rusella compacta with extra care. So his goal really was to sprout as many mushrooms as he could after all. I don't think so. Agnes gazed at the blue mushroom brooch Claude wore pinned to his shirt. She was beginning to get extremely tired of both him and his whole shtick. What kind of engineering, then? After finishing harvesting every last little shroom, Claude pressed her again. Agnes said, I'm receiving blessings from the spirits. Blessings? My late father was a native of the neighboring kingdom, and it's through his bloodline that I've inherited my peach blossom hair, and the blessings granted by the spirits who live throughout the land. And that's where the whole mushroom thing pops up. Just as the kingdom of Visage had its royal family with their dragon's blood, the country of her heritage had close ties with spirits. My plan, she went on, is to commune with the spirits in this area to receive their blessing, which will hopefully make the medicinal herbs even more potent so I can sell them at increased prices. Then I can make a greater profit. It's a little sneaky, but it works. I see. A lot of people refuse to even believe in the existence of spirits, but Claude luckily didn't seem to be one of them. They're not freaked out? Agnes steeled herself for his response. She was fully expecting him to tear her idea to shreds, but he merely tilted his head curiously. No, that sounds marvelous, actually. I'd love to see it. Uh-oh, did I just dig a big hole for myself? Yes, you did. As Claude continued to gaze at her with rapt fascination, Agnes felt her spirits sink. Getting him to leave quietly was not looking likely anymore. But, okay, I promise you won't laugh. Of course not. The power of a handsome young man's smile. She couldn't back down now. Reluctantly, Agnes turned to a nearby herb, plucked it, and held it aloft. Then she took a deep breath. This is going to be kind of odd. Spirits, how are you doing? Agnes's voice was sing-songy and light, like she was speaking to a child. 3 balls of light, some of the spirits in the garden, began to materialize. So can Claude see these? I'm assuming. The light balls floated in front of Agnes as if to say, hello. Then they seemed to notice the herb she was holding. Hello, spirits, I've got a request for you today. Could you bless this herb just a little? Agnes put her hand to her ear, awaiting a response. The light balls began to flicker. She couldn't hear them, but she knew they were asking why. He's just watching this. I need money if I'm going to live as a commoner. I plan to work too, but I need money up front to rent a room, you know. So what I want is to sell these plants if you can bless them for me. I can charge high prices if you do that. They'll sell like hotcakes. Oh, wait, you don't know what hotcakes are. Anyway, what I mean is, people will love them. A light bulb flickered rapidly as if to say, we understand. Their phrase, people will love them, seemed to have made them happy, Agnes realized. She went on, I wanted to harvest wild plants from the forest, but I can't do that right now, so I've been growing my own. I've only managed to grow a few, but could you please bless them? The light bulb swooped and swirled in the air before zooming over to the herbs. The green leaves began to change color, turning orange. Wow, thank you, little ones. See you again soon. Agnes waved and the spirits twirled in the air as if in response before zooming off to places unknown. She breathed a huge sigh of relief. It worked! She received the spirit's blessing. Now she turned back to face Claude. He was standing there, jaw agape. A second later, he imitated Agnes's sigh of relief. That was not what I was expecting. I don't know what he was expecting. Agnes knew what Claude meant, and she was embarrassed, but she hadn't wanted to show him in the first place. He made her. Communing with the spirit sounds like it should be a beautiful, ethereal thing, but no, it was like that. It wasn't as if she could have a back and forth, in-depth verbal discussion with them, so she was forced to rely on pantomime and child speak. It worked well to begin with, and now she was afraid to let up in case she ruined a good thing. So now she was stuck doing that. After all, sometimes the spirits ignored her requests. It wasn't like reasoning with a human being, it required a lot more effort on her part. Well, sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm sure it does look like I'm just talking to myself like a crazy person. Philip said as much. He always hated it. That's why I went so long without calling on the spirits. But now she needed money to start her commoner life. She needed the spirits' help. Claude's frown was growing deeper and deeper. Agnes felt her heart sink. No, he's frowning because of how Philip treated you. He was really that put off by me? The thought made her feel sad somehow. Oh, he's mad about the whole... You showing Philip this. You showed Philip this? Yes, well, it's more like he walked in on me doing it sometimes. Did you sprout mushrooms on Philip often? Claude was still frowning and he was going off subject. Agnes wasn't sure why he was asking. I guess maybe he was a little jealous that Philip got you first? Still, she thought back in her time with Philip to answer him. At first, yes. But at some point they stopped sprouting on him almost entirely. Was that because you grew to trust Philip? I don't think it was that. It was more like I didn't feel so on edge around him anymore. The mushrooms had stopped around the same time that Agnes had begun to see Philip as a troublesome little brother. At some point he'd stopped being a man in her eyes and more of a burden she'd been made to bear. Oh, that's probably why. I see. Claude fell silent. He's acting weird, but he doesn't seem annoyed with me. It's more like something else has upset him. Yeah, that whole thing with Philip is upsetting him. Agnes wasn't sure what was wrong with him. I don't think it's creepy, your spirit thing, just sort of surprising. Claude stepped closer to Agnes and peered at the medicinal herb she was still clutching. You were surrounded by this warm-looking light while you were talking. Was that the spirits? You could see them? Up until now, the only other person Agnes knew who could actually see the spirits was her late father. The guy's got dragon's blood. Do you not think he would be able to see this kind of thing? I think dragon's blood is kind of, gives you kind of some kind of special ability. I would think, anyway. Agnes knew who could actually see the spirit. A few others seemed to be able to sense them, though. If Claude saw the light balls, too, that meant he could see the same thing Agnes saw. Not clearly, it just looked brighter around you for some reason. Even that was enough. Agnes felt less alone now. The thought made her heart glad. Not many people can see them, you know? Maybe this is because of... Yeah, maybe this is because of your dragon's blood. She'd always secretly thought the whole Visage Royals have dragon blood thing was some kind of fairy tale. But perhaps it was real, and stronger than she'd ever thought. It might be. Either that, or the spirits decided to show themselves to me because they can see how deeply I care for you. Maybe. Who knows? We won't know because they can't really talk. Claude gave her a dazzling smile, and Agnes smiled wryly back. How far was Claude willing to take their ruse, anyhow? It's not a ruse. Was there any limit in how serious he was going to take this? We're not in public now. You don't have to pretend you're really in... He's not pretending, girl. But I mean it. At any rate, you looked beautiful talking to those spirits. Yes, you can drop the act. I'm serious. His dark gray eyes were fixed upon her. Agnes knew it was all part of the contract, part of the plan, but being stared at so closely by such a handsome man, she couldn't help being shaken. With a satisfying whoop noise, a snail-shaped mushroom sprouted out of the toe of Claude's boot. It was cream-colored with a glossy brown part on top that made it look like it was covered in caramel sauce. It was a Cryptoporus volvatus, clearly. Claude's eyes slid irresistibly down to look at the mushroom. His face lit up as he drank in its tempting sight. Agnes wondered why he even bothered to try to hide his excitement. I understand you want as many mushrooms to spry as possible, but you don't need to use trickery to get what you want. No, you got it wrong. I really am serious. You're saying you don't want the mushrooms. No, I want them, but I'm still being serious. Claude bent over and plucked the mushroom from his boot, carefully pocketing it. His pockets were overflowing with mushrooms today already. Agnes worried about what the palace staff thought of Claude returning from his outings with pockets stuffed full of mushrooms. Well, I want to get these herbs sold while they're still fresh, so if you'll excuse me... Wait, Agnes, I'll go with you. It looked like Claude hadn't had his fill of mushrooms yet. It was hard to say no to him. He was like a mushroom addict dying for a fix. And there was no time to spend arguing with him. Agnes headed back to her room to change out of her dusty dress. These are amazing, miss. Wherever did you get them? The shopkeeper was unable to hide his excitement, eyes sparkling as he gazed hungrily at the little yellow herbs. Usually the obvious answer to his question would be the forest, but a noble young lady like Agnes surely hadn't been out foraging in the woods. Agnes was going to hide the facts a little, but that was only because the shopkeepers wouldn't believe the truth anyway. Oh, I started growing some in the garden for fun, but they turned a funny color. You grew these in a garden? But how? What kind of soil? How much sun exposure? How much water? Fertilizer? You must tell me how you did it. I didn't do anything special, really. It was a coincidence. I think our garden just has good growing conditions. Agnes shrugged, not wanting to get into it. The shopkeeper heaved a huge sigh. A coincidence, huh? I see. Well, if you keep growing herbs of this quality, you'll put out all the wholesales out of business. They're that good? Agnes posed the question tentatively, and the shopkeeper nodded with a look of marvel on his face. These are more potent than usual herbs, many times over, in fact. They're worth a lot. And you can't get this kind easily, you know. It's a rare species, especially nowadays. Did something happen? Oh, there's this sickness going around affecting young kids. The usual herbs don't do much for it. Everyone's doubling up on doses. That's why supplies have dwindled. Well, thank you, miss. This will be a big help. The shopkeeper offered Agnes a sum of money much higher than she'd been expecting. She was shocked and felt giddy at the same time. Or guilty at the same time. Maybe she shouldn't have brought spirit-blessed herbs. Well, still, it sounded like they'd be put to good use treating the illness that was going around. Maybe that made it okay for Agnes to do what she did? Reaching for the money, Agnes was distracted by her thoughts and ended up bumping heads with the shopkeeper. A large purple mushroom that looked like a clump of flower petals spread on his arm. Oops. Sorry. All the color drained from the shopkeeper's face as he stared at it. Is that a fungal mutation of Polyporus umbellatus? The mushroom with the medicinal fever-reducing properties? The shopkeeper quickly plucked the mushroom and began examining it from all angles. Unmistakable! Is this new strain Feverratus disappearance? What the fuck? Please let me purchase this mushroom. With one of these, I can make a large amount of anti-pyretic medicine. Oh, yes, of course. The shopkeeper began rummaging in his lockbox while shooting looks of awe at the mushroom. Meanwhile, a certain mushroom fetishist was also gazing with longing at the purple mushroom. Luckily, he'd had the good sense to keep his mouth shut about it. This mushroom can only be found in limited numbers of areas where conditions are favorable. Even a small amount goes for a high price. And they're out of season right now. I can't get even a tiny stalk. They don't last long either. Once the petal parts crumble off, the medicinal properties are all but lost. To find such a fresh specimen, it's like some kind of miracle. I must make haste and turn it to medicine at once. Perhaps spotting the desire in Claude's eyes was what had made the shopkeeper hurry even more. He pushed the payment into Agnes's hands before disappearing into the back of the shop with an air of uncontained glee. Mushroom carefully cradled in his cup palms. Agnes, no, I will not sprout you one of your own. Oh, okay. This is so weird! Claude nodded sadly. He already has pockets full of mushrooms and he wants even more. Well, he doesn't have that one! The mushroom fetish's fungal lust was even greater than Agnes thought. No, he doesn't have that one. I don't think he's ever seen that one. You seem very skilled at bartering, Claude commented as they left the shop. Well, I'm an ex-commoner, remember? I sell mushrooms at that shop a lot. That's where I sell my dresses, and the skirts I made too. I'm a regular there. Oh yes, you talked about selling your dresses. So you sold all of them? Claude nodded incredulous, but Agnes nodded. I only wore drab and boring dresses to appease Philip, but I've managed to sell most of them. The ones nobody could ever want, I cut up and made into slightly cuter skirts. What do you mean, to appease Philip? Oh, right. At home, Agnes and her family often talked about Philip this way, but it must have sounded odd to an outsider. She couldn't expect Claude to know what she was talking about either. Philip was always going on about how I shouldn't wear bright colors or eye-catching jewelry. He said I stood out enough on account of my hair, and I should try to mitigate the effects by dressing down. He said that to you, and you listened to him? Yes, if I went against him, he wouldn't shut up about it. It was such a headache. Anyway, he was right. People hate my hair. No, they don't! The only ones who hate your hair are jealous women. I wouldn't mind so much if it only affected me, but I didn't want people looking down on my family just because of my appearance. Claude rubbed his chin thoughtfully. Because of who Philip and his mother are, most of the nobility didn't deign him worthy in the time of day. But over the past few years, his image really improved. I thought maybe he had finally matured and started to act more like a real royal, until I witnessed that awful behavior he exhibited the other day. Did you have something to do with his improved image when you were engaged, Agnes? Well, not very much. I would remember the names of influential people and remind Philip of them at parties. He never could remember anyone's name. Well, that's me too. And I would prop him up during discussions when it was clear he wasn't listening properly. Oh, and I made sure to school him on manners and etiquette as well. He never bothered much about that kind of thing before me. Oh yes, that'll be what he did then. So it was all down to you. Fundamentally, Philip hasn't really changed at all. So Philip's reputation benefited from our engagement, did it? Which means my efforts hadn't been in vain. Not that Philip was any of her business anymore. I wonder how that's going, by the way. As they strolled through the streets, they heard raised voices, probably some sort of quarrel. Disagreements are commonplace where people gather. The same rang true for commoners and aristocrats alike. The aristocrats are just better at hiding it behind a veil of decency. Agnes had never wanted to get involved in the gossip and backstabbing. That was another reason why she dressed down. Everything she did to protect her family from any kind of trouble. But despite her best efforts, she'd brought scandal to her name and theirs. The thought made Agnes feel so despondent. As she sighed, Claude frowned down at her. Agnes, you liked Philip that much? Agnes' eyes widened. What? No, I didn't. I don't feel anything for him. He was older than me, but acted like a bratty younger brother. But he was like family, or he was going to be family. That's what I told myself. Philip was just her ex-fiancé. How annoying. Her annoying, ridiculous fiancé. She felt no lingering sense of connection to Philip or their engagement. But she was still shocked. Shocked to have been betrayed so abruptly by someone she considered family. She fell silent. Claude took her hand, as if trying to comfort her. A white mushroom suddenly sprouted on his shirt. Agnes recognized the white finger-like strings hanging down like weeping willow fronds. The mop mushroom... Didn't we already see this one? Hericium arenaceus. He grinned and snatched it up with a practiced air. Claude was dressed down today again, but he couldn't hide his handsome face or regal air. Passerby kept looking at him. His face was so dazzling that no one seemed to notice the white mushroom blooming on his shirt. Perhaps they just mistook it for a ruffle. The stares bothered her, though. She was embarrassed. Of course she was. She was walking through town holding hands with a man. It must have been part of the ruse, but Agnes thought being seen in town together would have been enough. The hand-holding, though, was overkill. She looked up at Claude, meaning to complain, but instead he looked down at her with the sweetest smile. Claude? Philip is a fool, but I owe him one. Without him, I never would have met you, Agnes. And that's true, he might not have. So at least he was good for something. Okay, I'm gonna be looking at 5:15. Okay. She was at a total loss for words. Just then, a red mushroom and a white one bloomed on Claude's shirt. The little white mushroom was Cuphophyllus virginius, and the red cap mushroom with the white dots was Amanita buscaria. Needless to say, the sight of them made a certain pair of dark gray eyes sparkle. Agnes knew it would be churlish of her to complain about this onslaught of mushrooms. Part of their contract involved her keeping Claude well supplied, after all. Really? I don't remember that. She wished he'd be more aware of his good looks. Then again, he was a prince. Born into privilege and good looks, he was clearly oblivious as to how he came across to others. Anyway, she thought, he's not happy to have met me, he's happy to have met my mushrooms. No, he's happy to have met you, and the mushrooms are just a bonus. She needed to stay cool and just respond normally. But as she watched Claude happily pick the mushrooms off his chest, a series of yellow cap, brown cap mushrooms began popping up. They were clearly Gymnopilus junius, so many of them sprouted that it looked like Claude's white shirt was covered in an elaborate embroidery. Thank you for the compliment. Everyone hates my hair except my family. I know you only said it to get mushrooms out of me, but still, thank you. Agnes bowed stiffly, and Claude came to a sudden halt. They were still holding hands, so she was forced to stop as well. They stood there beside a horse-drawn carriage. The mushrooms clinging to Claude's chest stopped waving in the breeze, too. Ooh, did you say something? Agnes looked up at him in confusion. His dark gray eyes were clouded over with anger? Oh, okay, here we go. You're wrong, Agnes. Claude trailed off, biting his lip and huffing with frustration. The next time you go selling stuff, bring me along. Medicinal herbs and mushrooms are in high demand, right? I don't want you catching the attention of bandits. Yeah, that'd probably be... Yeah, you don't. Agnes' parents used to say the same thing. That was why she only made infrequent trips to town. Anyway, she knew the shopkeeper. She'd be fine as long as word didn't get out about her being the supplier. Thank you, but you're a very busy man, and if you don't want me to go with you, then I'll send Maurice instead. Just let me know, please. Claude fixed her with his dark gray eyes until she finally relented and nodded her assent. Here we go with the mushroom of the day. Or mushrooms of the day, I should have said. I didn't even notice that. Craterellus cornucopiads, a black funnel-shaped mushroom resembling a trumpet, also known as the trumpet of the dead. It's apparently eaten often in Europe, goes well with soup. So why the scary name, then? It was called forth by Agnes and tried to play a warning note to distract Claude, but mushrooms can't make music. Cuphophyllus virginius, small with milky white caps, a mushroom that loves romance. It couldn't fail to show itself today. He's holding her hand, it tried to repeat, but alas, mushrooms can't talk. It just can't help sprouting when anything romantic starts to happen. Is this an actual thing with this mushroom, or... I doubt it. You never know if it's going to be this one or the Amanita muscaria, though. Coprinellus disseminatus. A whitish-grayish cap. It looks like a white chocolate Apollo candy. I don't even know what that is. It's good at growing in clusters. This mushroom brought it along to increase the romantic atmosphere. Oh, romance and chocolate, doy. Rossella compacta. It has a red cap and goes powdery when dry. When humid, it's quite slimy. No one knows if it's poisonous or not. The flesh is brittle, though, so it's not really something you'd want to eat. It also gives off a stench like a rhinoceros beetle. No, I wouldn't want to try it myself. That mushroom brought it along for a pop of color. It was just going with the flow. Cryptoporus volvatus. It grows on tree trunks and looks like a snail. The bottom part is cream-colored, and the top part is a glossy brown. It looks like a chestnut stuck in a tree bark. The name makes it sound yummy, and it definitely looks yummy, but apparently it doesn't taste good. Amanita muscaria and Cupophilus virginius were fighting over whose turn it was, so this one stepped in. An opportunistic mushroom. Polyporus umbellidus. This mushroom grows like a parasite on tree roots. It's small with yellowish caps. Its mold can be made into the well-known herbal medicine Chorado. It doesn't appear in person in the story, only in reference. Oh. Okay. Okay, not a real mushroom. Thank you. Viveratus disapirus is not a real mushroom. A fungal mutation of Polyporus umbellatus with fever-reducing properties is purple in color. The mold of this mushroom can be made into medicine, but this mushroom's entire form can too. It's also cute with petal-like frills. Okay, so it's not a real mushroom. Okay. I get my answer. It becomes floppy and its medicinal properties decline over time, so it's a very rare and delicate mushroom. It can apparently take away the fever that's been going around. It sprouted up to lend Agnes a hand. Hericium erinaceus. A white stringy mushroom that looks like a mop. Very edible. It's difficult to harvest and often gets dirty and leaves stuck in it. Just like a broom, really. There was a fight between the mushrooms over who got to sprout on Claude's shirt, and this mushroom was the victor. Really? Oh my god. Amanita muscaria. This one we've seen a lot. Red with white spots like a storybook poisonous mushroom. It tries to sprout whenever it senses destiny, but often clashes with the romance-loving Cupophilus virginius. Over time, though, they forge a bond and try to sprout together. That's cute. Gymnopilus junonius. It looks like a yellowish shimeji, only poisonous. It's in charge of brightening things up. Whenever Agnes's heart beats fast, it tries to sprout up to keep the peace between the Amanita muscaria and the Cupophilus virginius. Here we go again, here we go. Chapter 11, The Male Mind and the Mushroom Mind. Oh boy. What's all the commotion? One day while harvesting herbs in the garden, Agnes realized she could hear Ray's voices coming from the house. She shouldn't have been able to hear any voices from the house while outside, which meant that whoever it was really shouting. Kevin was home. Maybe he was letting off steam with some friends? In that case, she didn't want to interrupt. No one would be glad to see the older sister with the weird pink hair. Agnes was worried she might bump into them still in the garden, so she brushed the dirt off her skirts and decided to return to her room. But once inside the house, she realized she recognized the yelling voice. Ah, the annoying voice that totally fails to tug at my heartstrings. Don't tell me it's Philip. Edging closer to the front hall, she could see Kevin in a heated conversation with a man with yellowish-brown hair. Oh, darn, I knew it was Philip. Great, Kevin's yelling at him. I don't blame him, though. With the way he treated his sister, I don't blame him. Agnes didn't know what they were arguing about. Kevin and Philip certainly weren't friends, though she knew that much. But for Philip to have come all the way to their house, it had to mean that he'd some business with her. She heard her name somewhere among the yelling, too, so she figured she was right. But their engagement was long over. What could Philip have come to their house for? He's still a royal, more or less, so I'd better go and greet him at the very least. Agnes let down her hair. She tied it back for gardening and slowly walked to the entrance hall. I was wondering who our visitor was. Hello there, Philip. Agnes walked into the entrance hall, speaking in a bright tone. Philip turned and spotted her, his face lighting up for some reason. In contrast, Kevin was standing there with a face like thunder. Agnes, there you are. I need to have a word with you. Go back to your room, sis. You don't need to talk to filth like this. Thank you. Kevin reached out and grabbed hold of Philip's sleeve, yanking him back as he tried to head over to Agnes. Philip was undeterred and kept pulling. He looked like a dog straining at its leash. What is Kevin thinking, manhandling a royal this way? He's not technically a royal. He's like royal adjacent. Her brother was clearly furious with Philip for dumping his older sister. I heard your voices all the way out in the gardens, Agnes said. And so early in the morning, too. You're going to annoy the neighbors. Can you please leave? Oh, God. He's gonna try and get back together. What, did his romance with Sabina end? Probably. I came here to see you. I didn't ask you to. You're making a nuisance of yourself, so please go away. Not only had Philip publicly dumped her, but he also tried to throw her in the dungeons too, so how dare he show up at her house now and demand an audience with her? You always had a nasty mouth on you, but you used to be a good, obedient girl. What happened to you? Nasty and obedient at the same time. Does he realize the contradiction there? She realized he was referring to her prior deference to him during their engagement. Well, that was a thing of the past. It's just like him to twist the facts to suit his own selfish narrative. He hasn't changed. None of your business. You've no right to see me anymore. Excuse me? And what's with your hair? I keep telling you to wear it up. Instead of wasting your time here, shouldn't you be visiting your dragon mate? I really don't think you should be concerned yourself with the hair of a woman who's functionally a stranger to you now. Yeah, go home, you cheating pig. Took the words right out of my mouth on that. Agnes wanted to add as she glared at Philip, who was smiling and nodding for some reason. Huh? Why, oh why, does he still think she has feelings for him? She just told him publicly that she doesn't want him. Oh, I get it. He smirked. You're jealous of Sabina. Okay, so now they're just to get it. Okay. Then why the heck does he want to see her then? You're jealous of Sabina. Wow. Just wow. Agnes, Kat, and Kevin said at the same time. I thought that you were just a philandering fool, but now it's all clear. You're not just a cheater, but a completely oblivious and misguided one, Agnes muttered. Kevin seemed to hear her because he nodded along, shooting Philip a look of disgust as he did. You're hopeless, Agnes, Philip chuckled. You really are. Now both Lefort siblings were glaring at him as if to say, the only hopeless one here is you. But the oblivious royal remained oblivious. Philip was so dense he wielded his stupidity like a weapon. That would be funny to watch. He could twist anything around and use an accuser's own words against him. It was quite the talent. But I'm willing to take pity on you, Agnes, he said smugly. I'll take you as my second wife. Heck no! You'll take who? I'll take you, Agnes. As whose second wife? Mine, of course. Then that's what you came here to discuss? Philip nodded, smugly self-confident. Agnes stared at him incredulously. Oh, she was so sick of him. She knew he was dense, oblivious, self-serving, and unfaithful. But he was so much worse than she remembered. She heaved a huge sigh. Get off my property. What? Why? Philip was clearly shocked to the core. But how? How could he be so shocked? That itself is shocking, Agnes thought. Why do you assume I ever accept such a proposition? She fumed at him. You dumped me in public, ordered me thrown into the dungeon, and drew a sword on me. You're a philandering fool, and I don't feel one scrap of affection toward you. Now you think I'll agree to be your mistress while you marry the woman you cheated on me with? Are you insane? Get a grip, Philip. Philip's eyes widened. Just how little does he think of me anyway? Agnes raged internally. Claude needs to show up and give this guy a piece of his mind. She debated throwing a punch, but refrained. After all, he was technically royalty. Royalty adjacent, but still. And besides, who knows how he'd punish her if she did. You've been friendly with Claude lately. Oh, yeah, kinda. It looked like news of their fake romance had reached even Philip's ears. Oh, he's mad because this guy is getting her now, and he wants her back. He's jealous. The bratty prince frowned, continuing in a menacing tone. Were you cheating with him behind my back? What? I think you'll find you're the only cheater here. It was never my intention. You got with someone else while engaged to me. Your soulmate, no? Do you even hear yourself? Are you deranged? Like I said, it wasn't intentional. Why did you leave me anyway? You're the one who broke our engagement. Hello? Anybody home? Is your head just for show? I love this girl. I love her. Even so, you had no right to... You broke up with her. Did you expect her to just stand there waiting? Oh, I'll wait here for him. He might have broken up with me and we're no longer together, but I'll wait for him. Does he hear himself? How dare you talk to me this way? I was publicly dumped, threatened with the dungeon, and menaced with a sword. Meanwhile, you cast me off for someone else. And you think I should have stuck around after that? Exactly. This guy is stupid incarnate. Philip was looking at Agnes with disgust, as if she was being cruel and unreasonable. This is insane! I agree! What are you doing? Agnes was spluttering in indignation. Someone else interrupted. Oh, Claude is here. Interjected in the cold voice. Here we go. She turned to see that young, handsome man with Prussian blue hair and dark eyes. Claude, come to the rescue, please. Talk some sense into him, please. Claude smiled at Agnes before stepping between her and Philip. Ah, perfect timing. Thank you. She couldn't help but feel relieved. How dare you show up at the house of a woman you rejected and cause this kind of commotion? Are you trying to heap further shame upon yourself? Claude, it is his business. This is his woman you're talking about here. Philip was actually standing up to the higher status Claude. Still, his voice sounded weak. It's every bit my business. How? Philip asked. Claude walked over to Agnes and put his arm around her. I'm in love with Agnes. I've fallen for her. What? Philip and Agnes both yelled in surprise. Girl, you knew this from the start! When this whole mushroom fetish thing started, you knew this! Then there was a popping sound as a pair of mushrooms suddenly sprouted. They jiggled cheerfully from their position on the tips of Claude's boots as they all watched. Let me guess. Dang it, how do you say it? The Cliff of Silhovis Virginius and the Amity Muscari. Let me guess, that's what they are. The one in his right boot was dark and brown. It looked like, oh, never mind. Amphilotus Deponius, it was fairly poisonous, probably reflecting Agnes's venom and anger towards Philip. But the mushrooms that sprouted on Claude had sprouted on Claude, not him. Probably still saw Philip as something akin to family. On Claude's right boot, there was a mushroom with a bright yellow cap. That one was probably Pleurotus citrinophilius. It was edible and would actually sell for a pretty good price. It was an oddly mismatched crop this time, probably reflecting how mentally distressed Agnes was right now. See those mushrooms? She did that. Philip grinned with wicked delight at the sight of the mushrooms growing on Claude. You're gonna be shocked to see this. He seemed to assume that mushrooms sprouting on his cousin meant Agnes was rejecting him. Yes, I know. Marvelous, isn't it? Oh, Philip is gonna have a very fun time with this if he gets out that this guy likes mushrooms. Claude peeked down at the mushrooms on his boots and smiled with satisfaction. His delight over them was plain to see. Clearly these two royals saw the mushrooms in completely different ways, but neither was aware of the other's opinion. Agnes didn't have the heart to say anything. Claude chuckled heartily, ruffling her hair. You must have heard the rumors. Everyone's talking about us. I heard yesterday. Philip spat. You've been shirking your public duties lately, so it's no wonder you were late to hear about it, Claude went on. I hear you can't even manage to remember the names of influential persons, so it's no wonder no one bothers telling you anything. Huh? So Philip's ignoring his royal duties, is he? Probably spending all his time with his dragon mate. Really, Philip? Agnes interjected. You still can't remember anyone's name. That's terribly rude of you. You should really put in more effort. Why don't you at least have your precious soulmate back you up? You shut your mouth. Anyway, remembering that stuff for me is your job. It's not my job anymore. Philip shrieked, pointing at Agnes. Why is it my job to prop up a socially inept man who's absolutely none of my responsibility? She bristled. Agnes couldn't hide her anger. Philip was so entitled. I agree. I am your responsibility. Wrong. We are no longer engaged. That makes us strangers. We zero connections to each other. You could just be okay with that? Yes? Agnes heaved a disgusted sigh. I just really don't care anymore, Philip. You're the one who chose this outcome, remember? Philip was the one who'd moved on to Sabina and ended their engagement. If he'd never done that, Agnes would probably be married to this silly fool by now. No, this was a reality entirely of Philip's own making. That's enough, Claude said. How dare you come here and make selfish demands? Philip, you make it sound like you're still attached to Agnes. Attached to her? Claude's harsh tone made Philip pout like an angry little boy. Not that it matters either way, Claude continued. Like I said, I've fallen for Agnes. I'm in the process of wooing her right now. I'll do everything in my power to get rid of you if you persist in menacing my beloved now that you no longer have any claim to her. Yeah, go away. Go away. Shoot. Shoot. Claude was smiling, but not with his eyes. Philip opened his mouth as if to say something, but then he clucked his tongue loudly in annoyance, opened the door, and left instead. Agnes and Kevin sighed with relief. The storm had passed. Thank you, Your Highness. Thank you for driving that pest from our house, Kevin bowed to Claude. It wasn't the most gracious way to deal with Philip, but at least he was gone. No, thank you for sending for me. He sent for you? Agnes looked at Claude in surprise. Meanwhile, Kevin cast his gaze toward the door that Philip had just left through. I knew when Philip showed up that he was here to cause trouble for you, sis, he said. So I sent for Prince Claude right away. Goodness. Agnes had assumed it was just lucky timing, but Kevin had actually summoned Claude to help. Is this the first time Philip has come here? Claude asked. It's the first time since he ended the engagement with Agnes. I guess he finally started to realize what he's lost. Too bad for him, though. Kevin scowled with disgust before turning back to Claude and bowing politely again. Philip is a royal, more or less, he went on. So I probably shouldn't say this, but he's a brat. He's got this sick attachment to my sister. Father and I turned a blind eye while they were engaged because we believed he really cared for her. But he's gone too far. Please, free my sister from his grasp, physically and mentally. Kevin, what are you doing? Agnes cried. I can explain to you that the relationship between Claude and I is just a ruse. What were you thinking summoning him here? That was very rude of you. No, he did the right thing here. She didn't mind Kevin going against Philip, but she couldn't let him inconvenience Claude this way. But Kevin simply sighed and shook his head. It's going to be difficult. As you can see, she's still heavily brainwashed by Philip. Agnes scowled at Kevin. What was he talking about now? But Claude merely nodded, an unreadable expression on his face. I don't mind how long it takes. As I've said, I'm head over heels for her. After that, Philip didn't come by again, but Claude started visiting on a regular basis. As a result, he ended up tagging along whenever Agnes went to the shop to sell and even got on friendly terms with the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper seemed to think that Claude was her fiancé. He always had a twinkle in his eye when he saw the two of them together. It was very vexing. Your little herb garden seems to be doing very nicely, miss. I've never had such irregular deliveries before. You must have magic soil. No magic soil, just the blessing of the spirits. Not that Agnes could say that, though. Oh, it's just luck, she giggled instead. I've heard those herbs are working wonders for that sickness that's going around. Those mushrooms you brought the other day, the medicine made from them is basically a wonder drug. Everyone's so grateful to you, miss. The shopkeeper was chatting away as he carefully took ownership of the yellow herbs that Agnes brought today. She'd prefer not to make this many selling trips, but she had to. Once she found out about the sickness going around, she knew she had to help. The sickness caused a high fever that sapped the energy of its victims, and apparently her herbs were the only treatments powerful enough to lower the fever. The regular non-blessed herbs apparently had little effect, so Agnes came by as often as possible, bringing the powerful herbs that she asked the nearby spirits to bless. Well, at any rate, she went on, I'm just glad I'm able to help out, and I get money for them, so it's nice for me. By the way, you haven't told anyone it's me bringing the herbs, right? I haven't told a soul. I'd hate for some lawless bands to target you, sweet miss. The shopkeeper handed over her payment, which Agnes accepted, but then he stared at her hands. I don't suppose another of those mushrooms will grow. What, you mean the purple ones? Yes, Feveratus disappearidus, the mutation of Polyporus umbellatus. The mushrooms that was said to have fever-reducing properties. The name was pretty much self-explanatory. I'm not sure it'll work, but we can try, she said. Agnes held out her hand, and the shopkeeper placed his atop hers, excitement in his eyes. With a tiny pop, a little brown mushroom appeared. The shopkeeper looked visibly disappointed. It's just a shiitake, I'm afraid, Agnes said. It's the luck of the draw, it seems, the shopkeeper responded. Well, thank you for this anyway. He bowed politely, plucking the little rounded shiitake mushroom. We could try one more time if you like. Agnes grabbed the shopkeeper's hand again, but only 3 more shiitake mushrooms sprang up. Oh boy. Just then, a third hand reached out and scooped up Agnes's hand. Another shiitake mushroom popped on the hand, too. That's enough for today, Agnes. Claude gently lowered her hand until it was by her side, his new shiitake mushroom bobbing about on the back of his glove. But we might get the right one if we keep trying, she protested. I never know what kind of mushroom will sprout, but there's so much chance of the next one being that one as anything else. Besides, there's no need for me to hide my power. The shopkeeper knows all about it. And the more medicine we make, the better. The sick children need it. In that case, Claude mused, it'd be better if it was me, wouldn't it? Pardon? Agnes looked up at Claude confused. He smiled back down at her. You should touch me to make mushrooms. The effect is strong on me, isn't it? He's right. But the shopkeeper will be fine too, Agnes thought. That mushroom grew up on the shopkeeper, she replied, so I think it's more likely to sprout again if I touch him. She shook her head, but the shopkeeper laughed and interjected. Miss, your beau doesn't want me touching your fair hands. Please, try to understand the male mind. The male mind? No, Claude is just hungry for the mushrooms. This is his mushroom mind at work. The last time he saw her sprout that mushroom, Claude's eyes had lit up with desire. He was obviously just desperate to get his hands on one of the pretty purple mushrooms. Yeah, I don't think he's seen that one before. Still, she couldn't out a prince as a mushroom fetishist, so she had to keep her response vague. The shopkeeper chuckled. The two of you are wearing matching mushroom brooches, aren't you? How nice it is to be young. Both of us? Agnes was wearing the pink mushroom brooch Claude gave her pinned to her chest. On her way out that day, Claude had asked to see her wearing it, so she put it on before leaving. But why was Claude wearing his mushroom brooch too? He hadn't been wearing it when he came to her house. Agnes didn't even notice him affixing it. When did you put that on? The two of us have been strolling through town wearing matching pink and blue mushroom brooches, like some sort of love-struck couple. How embarrassing. Agnes reached up to at least remove her own brooch, but Claude covered her hands with his. My male mind wants us to be wearing matching mushroom brooches. Please wear it just for today. Before Claude even finished talking, a string of pale reddish-brown mushrooms popped up on his black glove. Now Claude had shiitake mushrooms on his right hand, and on his left, a neat row of Tremella foliacea, a frilly, gelatinous fungus. Claude's left hand looked like it was covered in pinkish, ruffly petals. At a brief glance, it looked like he was wearing a fancy decorated gauntlet. Until you realized they were actually mushrooms, that is. Man mind. More like mushroom mind. Agnes sighed, watching Claude as he gazed at his own arm in wonder. After that day, Agnes tried several times to grow mushrooms by herself. She tried roping Kevin in as her guinea pig at first, but she couldn't get much of anything to sprout on him. Because you don't see him as a potential threat romance-wise. He's your brother. I'm assuming it does the same thing to your father? Several days passed with Agnes praying for mushrooms the whole time, but it was no use. Apparently she couldn't consciously sprout mushrooms. She was about ready to give up. She thought to herself. If the spirits are what caused the mushrooms, maybe if I speak to them directly, I could get them to sprout what I need. She closed her bedroom door and went to stand in front of her collection of filled vases. The bouquet from Claude just kept on coming. So Agnes's room was like a permanent flower show. The spirits seemed to like it, and now that Agnes had regained much of her communicative powers, she was able to contact them pretty much any time. She didn't even need to call for the balls of light anymore, as they seemed to stay materialized around her anyway these days. Okay, let's try this. Agnes took a deep breath and focused on the glowing balls of light. Hello, spirits! The balls of light flickered as if responding to her. Agnes definitely felt a little awkward standing in her room and talking to herself in a super cheery baby voice. She used to like chatting with them, and made her feel like she had a secret friend, but these days she was much less prone to whimsy. She couldn't let them know how awkward she felt. She had a purpose, after all. She wanted to be able to sprout mushrooms of her own volition somehow. Just like playing with cute little kids in glowy ball form, Agnes told herself as she smiled at the spirits. I have another request today, spirits. Would you grant me what I seek? The floating light balls glowed brighter. The thing is, I want to be able to sprout a specific mushroom. There's a special mushroom I need called Fevervitis dispiritus. It was purple and it takes away fever. Do you guys know it? The balls of light swayed in the air before giving off a flickering glow. Ah, they seem to understand me. Alright then, can any of you cuties sprout one of those for me? A small mushroom appeared beside one of the vases with a pop. It was purple and looked like flower petals. No doubt about it, it was that mushroom. Agnes was delighted. She could make medicine with this. And the spirits granted her wish and allowed her to sprout a mushroom of her own choosing. Thank you, cuties, she cried. I love you all. The glowing balls flashed in pleasure. Agnes quickly plucked the mushroom off her dresser and zoomed out of the bedroom. She wanted to head directly to the shop, but she'd been told to alert either Claude or Maurice when she went there to never go alone. She sent a messenger, but neither man could drop what he was doing and come just then. In fact, neither could guarantee that they could make time today at all. One was a prince and a knight, the other a knight and a royal bodyguard. They were busy men with busy lives. But that mushroom was beginning to wilt and crumble in Agnes's hands. The shopkeeper had told her this particular mushroom was delicate and would soon break down, which would reduce its medicinal properties. She needed to deliver it while it was still fresh. And the shopkeeper mentioned he'd be closing up shop before noon today. When Agnes had gone there to sell her herbs the other day, the shopkeeper had mentioned he was going to a nearby town on business. The shop was going to be closed in a few hours. The shopkeeper told her his business trip would take several days, so if she waited for Claude, she wouldn't be able to sell the mushroom for another few days. At the earliest, that'd be far too late. I can't waste this mushroom, not when it has the power to help sick children. Agnes hesitated just a moment. Then she quickly left a message with one of the servants, pulled her hair down low to cover her face, and quickly left the house. Oh, please don't have anything happen to her. I think I'm going to have to end this part off here, guys. I will see you all in the next one.